Welcome to the Money and Flow podcast, where cash and vinyasa flows meet. This is the first podcast that talks about how your money stories, through looking at your ancestral lens, can help activate your financial wellness plan. And without further ado, your host, Eugenie George. Welcome back to the Money and Flow podcast. This is your host, Eugenie George. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be chatting with y'all this lovely, lovely day, evening, night. Today we're going to talk about the year end, the good, the bad, the ugly. I wanted to start with the bad because I'm a little outraged, and this is also why I've recorded this episode so soon. So recently, Sheryl Sandberg was interviewed by Black Enterprise. For some of y'all, if you don't know who Black Enterprise is, it's a Black business-owned magazine. And the questions that were asked were, what do you think it takes for Black women to lead in, or women of color to lead in? And she didn't really have a good answer, and it makes a lot of sense why, and I'll break that down. But Black Twitter today was blowing up. So it was really funny, and of course interesting to hear so many people that were outraged about the conversations, about the dialogue, because a lot of the answers that she gave didn't really help Black women understand how they could lean in. But more importantly, I think the biggest thing that we should really pay attention to is, in order for anyone to think about diversity and inclusion, meaning inclusivity, not only just being race, not only just being class, not only just being gender, but an all inclusive environment, that means that you have to be so self-aware that you're able to move past your own viewpoints. And that is really hard. Like, even for me, it took me a long time for me to even look past my viewpoints. And I'll give you a great example. So I was writing a book about race and class and women and money and health and trauma. My boyfriend is not Black. He is white. And I had this conversation, and I just lashed out at him because I had to understand that the reason why I'm getting angry at him was because of the fact that he was white. It had nothing to do with him as a person, because if anybody who knows my boyfriend, he's way more woker than I am in some ways. Like, he is definitely more of a rebel, and he has definitely a different view, a political view, than I do. And I appreciate that. And then also, like, if I look at my bookshelf, he has like every book about race and culture, and plus, he has biracial children. So I can't get mad at him for that. So I had to recognize my own bias, and that is a really hard thing to admit. So, Sheryl, you didn't do a great job. However, there's a couple of books that you could read that could help you, just like Lean In helped a lot of women. So one of the first books to read is White Fragility, which is a really difficult book to read. It's just because a lot of times white people have never had to think about race. So the idea of white fragility could be really jarring for people. The second book that I would recommend is The Color of Wealth. And that book kind of explains big picture, policy-driven acts of discrimination. And you can pick it up at your local library. That book is super dense, but it does give you an overview of why people are doing what they're doing, and then also how these laws were in place. Oh, also, if you want, you can also look at Our Money Stories, which is a book that I wrote. So, and that's all about race, class, ancestry, And we talked a lot about particularly being a woman of color, breaking down Native Americans, Latin Americans, or Latinx, Asian American, and African American identities. I ask a lot of questions, and yeah, there's a lot of things that we have not had a conversation about, our actions, our awareness, and how that affects from our ancestry. So, yeah, another book is The Memo, which is super crazy that that whole conversation even took place recently, because that book just came out, and then poop, all of a sudden she like started talking about sitting at the table. So if you want to read that, that's by Minda, Harts. There's lots of other books. I'll make sure I'll put those in my resource page. So if you go to moneyandflow.com/resources, we'll put those books down. Anywho, let's dive into your 2020 financial wellness plan. Yeah. Woo! And we're back. Here's the thing. Most people in the world never have the conversation of what does it mean to be financially well, all right? We know what it means to be well when it comes to our wellness plan or being healthy or fit, but I don't think most of us have that conversation of, if I had to look at my money, if I had to look at all aspects of my life, how would that help me get to the place that I need to be content? Not living my best life, not crushing it and I'm uber successful. What does it look like for me to be content? So, in this portion of the podcast, we're going to talk about activating your 6-week financial wellness plan. Now, what I hate about the New Year's is most people say, okay, we're going to start something new. We're going to start working out and work out every day. This year is a new year. And then, of course, we know all of those ideas, they fall flat. And one of the reasons why if they fall flat is that most habits, it takes 66 days, almost a full quarter, to activate a new habit. That's a long time. So that means every day you have to kind of like chug away with this new habit. So that's why those habits don't work. Last year, people were so sick of talking about habits. Everyone's like, what's the intention that you're setting? But the intention, unless you have some measured goal or say like by the end of this year, I want to do this, intention doesn't, you can't really measure that unless you say, by every week I would have written one thing of gratitude or gratitude note to myself. That's a measurement, right? So setting the year with intention kind of is a crapshoot. Doing a 30-day change your life thing is kind of a crapshoot. So we're going to talk about looking at a financial wellness plan. And this is also going to be in the book. I'm not going to be that detailed because I want y'all to buy the book, tell your mama, tell your friends. But what I want us to do is to look at, one, where are we? 2, what's going on with our ancestry? 3, how does that play a role in our context of money? And then 4, how does this actually look at our whole well-being? So let's dive into it. So week 1 is really just celebrating that you're about to have a money date. It is where you learn about setting a schedule for yourself to start looking at your money for the rest of your life, all right? Or at least a period of time. So the first thing is you start scheduling Google Calendar invites, okay? And you start saying what type of money date that you need to have for this week in order for you to be successful. So I say that there are 4 dates. I say there's an education date, an inspiration date, there's a guidance date, and there's a planning date. you can kind of tell which type of money date you need, but each of these money dates will help you understand, okay, I need to actually plan out my budget. This week, I'm going to look at my budget. Or, okay, I actually really would like to read some books about money. This week, I'm going to read Clever Girl Finance. Or this week, I'm going to read Our Money Stories. Or this week, I'm going to read The Color of Wealth. Any of those books, you make the decision to educate yourself on money, right? So that's the first week that you do. Okay, so let's say that's January 1st. You start looking at January 1st and you just start scheduling. All right, you start the scheduling of dates and you put it on a weekly basis and you try to find money dates that fit in with your schedule. Okay, if you have Jaleesa's coming back from Guatemala and you haven't seen her in 3 years, do not schedule it on that Thursday. So it's more about you just being aware of your schedule and making sure you fit your money in. We fit everything else in our schedule, so we just kind of have to be more vigilant. Now, for some folks that are like, I'm not a scheduler, it feels uncomfortable, I'm experiencing a resistance. Oh, baby, I get where you're at, but you're having resistance because you're dealing with stuff with your money. So that's the resistance, and you don't want to look at it. So I have to be this mama bear and say, we have to get over this because it is uncomfortable, but it could be way worse when we get older. Plus, we all know that the way the world is working right now with our finances and 401ks and stuff like that, you have to be super diligent about your money, and it sucks. I hate it too. I wish I had a pension. Okay, but no, I don't. Not really, but you know what I mean. Like sometimes I wish I lived a different time, but then I realized, no, this is the best time to be alive. So let's move into number 2, week 2. Week 2 is interesting. We haven't talked about numbers yet. All right, we're getting into the habit. Now, if you're already someone that's budgeting, dope, keep budgeting. But what we want to do for week 2 is we want to start looking at your money story, okay? So yes, did I talk about the money date 101? Clearly, week 2's conversation is a guidance date or a reflection date. Week 2 is where you start looking at your money story. So you yourself are uncovering all the crap and start understanding your money blocks, right? Is there a reason why you only go to a certain store than others? Did your mom say that you should go and get Gucci because you know you've made it when you got Gucci? You know what I mean? So those are kind of conversations and questions that you have to have with yourself. There's a week 2, I do the light version, which is really cute. Like, what's the first story that you've learned about money? Or what's the first money experience you ever had? But then I'm like, listen, if you're ready to dive deep, here's another option. If you have a therapist, let's write that option out. And I give a really great story by someone who, God bless her, I call her Shauna in the book because I don't expose anybody's names. And she has been through a lot and is super successful. But because she never looked at her money story, she never realized why there was a block between her and her husband. There was a block between her and the need to make so much money because there was always a scarcity mindset. So yeah, you got to get there. You have to understand where you are with your money story. I talked about earlier about how I just had an argument with my partner, and that was something that I had to uncover. Like, do I feel less than if I'm not making a certain amount of money than him? What would it look like if I was the breadwinner? What would it look like if we had children? Like that, those are conversations that I have to understand with my money story and why I'm blocked. So that is hard, all right? And you don't have to do it alone. Week 3, it is your money identity. So we all know that there is no one size fits all model. So this is where we figure out your ancestral money personality type. So regardless of where you stand, we all have personality types, identities. You can use the one that I have, or you can also use the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs. The thing is your personality type or the way you operate in the world, your strengths, all of those things play a role into how you handle your money. All right. So that's where we understand your money identity. So that's week 3. So we're already at week 3. Okay. The next one is week 4. That is the money plan. So by the end of January, it should already be, whereas hopefully, because sometimes it takes longer, and sometimes you might still be on week 1 on the 4th week. It takes a while. Week 4 is the money plan. So that's where we uncover some of that spending. Okay. We're figuring out where you're spending your money, why, and how. Sometimes we spend our money when we're stressed. Okay. I feel like I have spent the most amount of money on e-courses or coaching when I am desperate. So now this year it is literally no coaching, no e-courses, because I have enough. I'm not doing any more things for 2020. I'm not doing any coaching. It's about the numbers and understanding that I am enough and I have the ability. Now that's not to say you might not be there. You might be wanting to write a book, or you might want to start a side hustle and you need a coach, or you need a career change. Do that, okay? But I did that all last year, so I'm pretty much done with that. So money plan is where you uncover all your money and spending. Kind of went on a tangent. Week 5 is the money goals. Okay. So that's where we create these money brain dumps. We map out your goals. And this is where we start looking at our wellness as a whole. Okay. So we start looking at our spiritual wellness. Our spiritual pillar. We start looking at our environmental pillar. We start looking at our emotional pillar. We start looking at how money relates to our relationships. So it's more about us doing some work and seeing how or what steps do we need to take to be healthy, right? Let's say you need to go to the dentist. This is a Eugene thing. You need to go to the dentist. That has to do with your emotional side, because I look at one of my teeth and I go, it really makes me sad. So I really need to take care of that. So it's not necessarily spending the money. It's how the emotions or how I'm feeling about it is affecting my money, right? Last week is where we look at your financial BFF. So everybody needs to have some form of accountability when it comes to their money. Somebody. I don't know if it's their parents or not, but you have to have someone else to help you with your money. There's no way. No one has done it alone. Okay? This is the hardest thing, because this is the biggest problem. Most people don't ask other people for help. And particularly for women, and particularly for women of color, for some reason, we just think we have to figure this all out. You know what they used to have? Home ec. And home ec used to teach you how to budget, balance a paycheck. I think it's now called I forgot what it's called. I know they still have home ec and it's called something science. But we don't have that. We never had that. And your schools and classes did used to teach you that stuff. So because we don't have that, we have to do it ourselves. We need to ask people for help. And that could be a hard thing. So that is the 6-week process. I'm going to repeat that again. 1 is your money date, 101. We're just starting the habit. 2 is uncovering your money story. 3 is your money identity. 4 is the money plan. 5 is the money goals. Week 6 is a financial BFF. And the cool thing about it is, let's say you're done with week 6, and you start celebrating, guess what? You can start back up and start scheduling the new meetings. Okay, I know I need this. I know if I'm going to get engaged, what is that going to mean for my money story? So you have to start asking those questions. So it's not always numbers. It's understanding how all of your habits and patterns are affecting your money. Well, that is a year. This is the end of 2019, end of a decade. And now you have a financial wellness plan that you can take home with you, and you can actually unpack where you are with your money and create a new narrative for yourself. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. You can email us at moneyinflowpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on the Twitter. That's usually George. You can find me because I'm always tweeting. And now I'm not really on Instagram anymore. I'm more on the Pinterest side. So if you're looking for some inspiration, you can also find me on Pinterest, which is usually George. Let me know what's up. Tell me what's going on. And if you have any questions in terms of how would I do this or what it look like, Money and Flow is coming out 2020. So you will have that out. And there will be a video of me explaining exactly the step-by-step process that I'm doing. And that'll be free, and that'll be on YouTube. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited to get my hair did for that. Anywho, love y'all, and I will chat with y'all soon. Woo! Get ready for that new year. Take care.